I am Kristen. If you missed me last night, there was absolutely nothing special about me. I am not like amazing, except that about 7 years ago, I had my life was like in flames, and my husband was in prison for a crime that he didn't commit, and I was a single mom and living with my parents, and decided to start a business during all of that, and managed over the course of that 7 years to build a wildly successful business, go into work for myself, start another successful business, actually two since then, and got my husband pardoned by the president, and moved out on my own, took care of things. My husband is home now, and I really went through some very crazy bad stuff. And you would think that while you're in the middle of going through really crazy bad stuff would not be the time to like start a business, or three, and do all of these things, but yet it was. And the reason why it turned out to be so wildly successful is that through my distributorship percentages, I got a ton of personal development, and I needed it so bad. I drank it like water in the desert after I got over my initial resistance, because I was like, I don't need personal development. I'm fine. So once I got over myself, God loves to humble me. I really started to embrace all of the personal development that I was hearing and started to apply it. And I realized as I started to apply all these principles that all of these terrible things that were happening in my life no longer had control over me, because I had freedom, because I had control over myself, because I had influence over the things around me that was positive, because I was able to exercise self-control and learn how to train my brain in a way that as things happened all around me, that I wasn't being tossed to and fro, that I could stay goal-driven and goal-oriented, that I could reduce conflict while moving things forward. So I picked up some helpful skills. I want to share them with you because I honestly believe that if everybody could grab just a few of these things and really master them, that you will enjoy so much more peace and contentment in your life, even if the whole thing is burning to the ground, because that's what it felt like at times, that it was absolutely burning to the ground, but I could still have peace and joy and contentment. So what I'm going to talk about today is about training your brain to just catch negative thoughts, behaviors, and reframe them to your benefit before they ever happen. All right. So the first thing we're going to do here is kind of settle in with just a little scenario. And I want you to picture yourself at a restaurant. So you're in this restaurant, you've gone out for, date night with your spouse. It's a nice restaurant. It's a splurge. You only do it once a month. You know you're going to spend a couple $100. So you're really revved up for an amazing evening. And your server is a jerk. We're just gonna say it's easier to stick with one, but like he's not coming by enough. He forgot your drink order. He's obviously rushed. He tried to take your appetizer and your entree order at the same time because you can just tell he wants you to get out. And everything about this person is oozing disrespect. And you came in there and you're like, I know I'm going to spend a bunch of money. You're ruining my evening. You're being really disrespectful to me. And you're not only disrespecting me, but you're disrespecting my spouse. And this is one of those places where my brain has problem, because I can kind of like take disrespect when it comes to me. I don't accept it. I don't tolerate it, but I respond to it differently than when people disrespect my spouse. It makes me very stabby. So just consider that and think about and ask yourself a couple of questions. So the first one is, would you be upset? And why or why not? There are several different types of people in the world, and there's nothing wrong with any of them. There's no trick question here. I just want you to think, like, what's my natural inclination here? So there are the people who are literally just going to blow that off. They're not going to let it bother them. They're just going to go back to their dinner. They're going to ask for what they need when they want it and just hope it shows up and make the best of it either way. Cool. And then there are the people who are not going to say anything about it, but every time that server leaves the table, you're going to make a comment to your spouse about it, and you're going to be frustrated about it all evening, and then you're going to leave, and you're still going to be frustrated and talking about it, and it's going to kind of ruin your night. And then there's the third kind who's like, you know what, I'm just going to take a direct approach. I'm going to call over the manager. I'm going to express how I'm feeling about this situation. Maybe I'll get something comped. At the very least, I'll probably get that, French 75 I ordered 30 minutes ago that never showed up. And do it that way. Or there are people who might address the server like, hey, I don't know what's going on tonight. I really hope that you're having an okay day. It seems like you're a little rushed. I just wanted to let you know that, I think that you're doing a good job, and that I hope that, I hope that you're having an okay day. Do you think you could check on that French 75 for me? So there are just like these different types of people who address things in different ways. And I just want you to ask yourself, like, what is my natural inclination? Like, if I'm thinking about this scenario, because you've probably all been in a scenario where somebody was kind of disrespectful in a restaurant, like, what would I do about it? And why? Now, what actions would you take? Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead. Like, would you stew about it? Would you completely let it go? Would you ask to talk to the manager? Would you try to disarm and charm the server? Like, what are we doing here? What actions would you take? And now, I want you to just set that aside for a minute, and I want you to think about instead, what actions give you the best chance at a positive outcome? Okay? And those two might be two different things. So we're going to break that down a little bit, because you might be thinking, you're like, well, I mean, how do I decide what's the best chance? Like, what's the positive outcome? And the answer here is breaking that down into how you think about things. So I'm going to start with the normal order of conflict, okay? So the normal order of conflict is there's some kind of interaction, and these, everything's cool, and then things start to escalate, and there's some kind of altercation, and words come out of our face, and we're upset, and we're just like, and things happen, and then we leave the situation, and then we start to process it. Man, I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have said that. I can't believe that this thing happened. And then you start thinking, you're like, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe that person was just having a bad day. Was that the graceful approach? Have I ever been in that position before? And I start processing it all and thinking about it. And then I decide, all right, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to make peace with the situation? Am I going to let it go? Or am I going to make war? Did something happen here that I find unacceptable and that I will not let go? Now, here, let me offer you an alternative. Okay, so here's the alternative. What if you change the order? What if you were having an interaction, and as things started to escalate, you had the emotional control to stop, even briefly, to pause for a moment, process it, have that conversation that you would have had later with yourself. Am I being graceful? Am I, meeting my goals? What do I want to do here? Do I want to make peace? What serves me best? Or do I want to make war? And I'm not even here to tell you that you should always pick peace. I pick war. I do. I decide, I'm like, you know what? That is not going to work. That is not going to be a tolerable thing. So I'm going to make war. But when you give yourself the opportunity to make a conscious decision about that situation before you react, you get the ability to avoid conflict a lot, because many times you will decide that peace is the better option. Like, the server or whatever, the guy at the gas station, the witchy lady in the grocery store line, like, none of that matters. None of that matters. It's not worth escalating. Make peace with that, move on with your day, blow it off, cool. But if you decide that you're going to make war, when you do that before you've escalated, when you have control of your emotions, now you have a strategy. Now you're approaching things in a way that is calm and is calculated and is thoughtful. And you are more likely to win your war if you don't pop off at the mouth before you start thinking. All right? I'm just saying, because I am good at winning. I have won some pretty big battles here. I'm just talking about a presidential pardon. At one point, somebody was trying to temper my enthusiasm, is what I will call it, because that's who I am, and told me that I had a better statistical chance of getting hit by lightning twice. And I was like, thank you so much for that feedback. I'm definitely going to make it happen now. So pick your wars, pick your strategies, and go after them, but do them in a way that is calm and is calculated, and give yourself the best chance to win. Excuse me. My voice just like completely cracked on me here. All right, I'm going to turn off my video for a second just so you can see the whole screen. I don't have a great place to put this right now. So this is all about goal-oriented thinking. It's about separating your ego from your goals. I had a situation come up just literally today. I was in a chat group. There was something going on. People were upset about it. I asked a completely fact-based question, and somebody else was offended by it. And so I had to take a moment, because I was not wrong. I was not wrong. And their defense about the question that I asked really put me off. And I was like, I need to make a choice here. Am I going to go toe to toe with this person because I need to have a sense of equity and justice, and I am right and they are wrong, and I want everybody here to know it? Or do I have a goal that might preclude that? And my goal, I needed an answer to my question. And I knew if I derailed the chat with my, need to be right with my ego, even though I still completely believe that I was right, that I might not have gotten the answer to my question. And I might have actually derailed the entire thing from the conversation that was most important. So I set my ego in the back seat because my wallet's more important. And I apologized, even though I had nothing to apologize for. I said, hey, I am so sorry. I thought I was asking a fact-based question. I apologize if that came off as criticism. I'm sure you're doing nothing wrong. And I just threw it out there, and it was, totally fine. And we were back to the conversation that was going to help me most, which was gathering the information that I needed. So you've got to ask yourself, what's my goal for this interaction? My goal needed to be the answers to the question that I needed it. And my goal needed to not be my ego, because my ego really, really wanted to have a conversation about that. So, what outcome will cause the most good? So this is another great question. So first, ask yourself, do you pause to consider what your goal is for any interaction? Even in minor scenarios, people who are gripey at the grocery store, whatever. Pause and ask yourself, what's my goal here? My goal is to get my groceries and get back in my car. My goal is not to have an energy vampire get in some kind of argument with me. So I will do anything to de-escalate stuff. And it's not because I'm a pushover. Trust me, I'm not. It's because I don't want my energy sucked up by negative stuff like that. And it's not getting me anywhere towards my goal. My goal was to get my groceries. All right. So then you ask yourself, what outcome will call the most good for all parties, even ones you're at odds with? So if you go back to the restaurant scenario, maybe the thing that would cause you the most good is asking the manager to come over, getting something comped, maybe getting your drinks paid for, getting part of your bill paid for. But the most good in that situation for me is to disarm, charm, and get the server feeling good and being nice. I just want them to have a better day. Something's going on with them. They're very unhappy. So I think that in that scenario, that the most good is going to come from making peace with that person. And what's more important, your goals or your ego? Well, I love my ego, but I'm out to dinner with my spouse. I'm spending quite a bit of money on this. This was not what I had in mind for my evening. I did not have in mind arguing with a server or feeling disrespected or feeling gross. So my goal for this evening is to have a wonderful night connecting with my spouse. And I can't do that if I'm distracted by somebody else's bad behavior. And then how do I get there the fastest? What is the fastest way to your goal? I could have had that argument in that chat today and then maybe still circled back to that conversation and gotten the answer that I needed eventually. But the fastest way to my goal was to let it go and stay focused and objectively without considering your ego. What's the fastest way to get there? So just a little quote here. People with goals succeed because they know where they're going. It's as simple as that. Do you know where you're going? Do you know what you want? Are you getting distracted by your ego? Hopefully not. All right. So when we're going back to the restaurant scenario, what's my goal for this interaction? To have a pleasant evening out with my spouse. That is the goal. The goal doesn't change because somebody else decided to be disrespectful. What outcome will cause the most good? For us is to make peace with our server, get things back on board, and for us to have a great evening together. And how do I get there the fastest? For me, that is to disarm, charm, be graceful, and have kindness. And it's not even about being nice for the sake of being nice. It's about being nice because it's logical to be nice, because it's going to get you to your goals faster. So never, ever strike out of anger if at all possible. This will give your enemy the advantage and strengthen his resolve and psyche. If you think if you are going to pop off at that server, that they are going to acquiesce to you and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, and, play to your ego, you're wrong. They're probably going to pop right back off at you. And now they've probably got the upper hand because you seem out of control. All right. So just, by the way, I have a really direct manner of speaking, and I'm very like tough love. So if you absolutely hate me, that's okay. But if you can grab a couple of nuggets out of here, if there's just something that clicks in your brain, whether you're like, man, I don't like that girl Kristen at all, but there was like something she said that I think might be helpful, that is totally fine. So I'm just going to kind of be me. And if being me is obnoxious to you, that's all right. Just listen for the nuggets. We always say, chew up the meat, spit out the bones. When we hear like, a pastor give a sermon that we don't totally agree with, that happens sometimes. Or they have a personality style that conflicts. I'm like, all right, chew up the meat, spit out the bones. So do me a favor too, as you're watching, if you find a nugget that you like in here that's helpful, drop it in the comments, because not everybody is going to have the chance to watch a whole video, but they might get something really beneficial by seeing the things that you found to be helpful in the comments. So I would love for you, if you get some little nuggets out of this, to just drop them in the comments, so as people are scanning through our group, that they can grab some of those nuggets as well, even if they can't watch the whole video. Okay, so forget fair. I am so sorry, but life is not fair. Nothing is fair. If equity and justice are your goals in every situation, just give up. I'm not saying give up on justice or equity or fairness. I'm saying that if every interaction in your life has to be fair, you are spending a lot of time on something you cannot control. So I loved this little quote from Sue Kidd. She wrote The Secret Life of Bees. It says, nothing is fair in this world. You might as well get that straight right now. So you don't have to worry about it being fair. I wasn't worried about fairness when the girl popped off on me in the chat. I'm not worried about fairness by giving people grace when they simply don't deserve it, as long as it's moving me forward towards my goals. So if your goal is to always be fair or equal, is it really your goal talking, or is it like an internal sense of justice? Is it your ego? What's fair is not always right, and what's right is not always fair. And when you look at things from an abundance standpoint, like there's plenty for everyone, I don't need to worry about this, it doesn't have to be fair, it doesn't have to be even, then things become really magical, because you're not worried about constantly, I've got to get mine, I've got to get mine, I've got to, it's got to be fair, it's got to be equal. When you stop worrying about things being fair and equal, so many more things become available to you. It's like almost the opposite of what you would expect. So the magic key here is control. So it's all about self-control. And if you'll stay with me, I've got some tactical exercises, like simple things that you can do to create this kind of control. It takes a little practice, but once you start thinking about it and rolling it over in your head and learn a couple of little exercises that you can do to push it forward, you will find that you love it. So I have this great little quote here. It says, I'm very happy because I have conquered myself and not the world. I am very happy because I have loved the world and not myself. Beautiful, right? So even when you are going out with a spirit of excitement and about getting yours and accomplishing your goals, you're not going out to conquer anyone else. You're going out to conquer yourself, to be your best self. You are not in competition with anybody else. You are not compared to anybody else. You only need be concerned with conquering your own self, because the only thing you have control over in this world is your attitudes and your actions. Period. You don't have control over your kids. You don't have control over your spouse. You don't have control over your job. You don't have control over the people around you, the weather, the politics, the politicians, the finances, the economy, the inflation. You have control over none of that. But if you can master yourself, you can be peaceful. So you have to master what you can and cannot control. And what you can control is very limited. And what you cannot control is very extensive. The things that you want to influence. But the way that you influence them better is by having control. And then once you determine what you can control, you must control it relentlessly. Relentlessly control what you can, which is your attitude and your actions alone. All right, so I keep getting ahead of myself and saying things I'm about to say. So everybody in the world is seeking happiness, and there is one sure way to find it. That is by controlling your thoughts. Happiness does not depend on outward conditions. It depends on inner conditions. So I told you that my husband was in prison, and it was a really bad time. Prison is not an amazing place. He was in a federal penitentiary. That was really bad, team. That was really bad. And I loved this man with all of my heart, and he had done nothing wrong. So the thought of considering him sitting in prison day in and day out, 24 hours a day, being treated as a subhuman, because that's how you get treated in prison, because most people in there committed crimes, it was awful. And I was struggling to even allow myself the ability to have any happiness or joy because I felt guilty. So I'm at lunch with my family one day, and my sister, it's been several months since the conviction, and my sister is like, hey, I'm going to a winery this weekend with my friends. I think you should come along. And I burst into tears because she invited me somewhere. And I was like, how could I possibly allow myself to go have fun while my husband is in a living hell? And no kidding, because this is like a God thing, my phone rings and it's him. And we get to talk once a day for 10 minutes a day, and that's it. And he called me as I was having this conversation, and I stepped outside and he's like, hey, why are you crying? And I told him the situation, and he said, well, let me ask you something. Does your suffering make me happier or better, or does it make me feel worse? And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it would probably make you feel worse if I'm suffering. And he's like, yeah, it is. I need you to be happy and well and content because it helps me to be happy and well and content. And despite the fact that I did not want to go to that wine thing, I went to that wine thing. I made choices. I made choices about what I was going to say. I made choices about how I was going to act and how I was going to feel. And it did not feel right that first time, but I kept doing it. And I kept choosing joy, and I kept choosing happiness, and I kept choosing going out with my friends. And then I started traveling with my daughter and taking her places. And then we started we went to Disney World. I was like, you know what? We have control over so little. I'm going to control how I feel. And I'm not going to give away all of my joy and happiness and peace and contentment because my outside circumstances are terrible. That doesn't mean that my inside circumstances have to be, because I have control over that. So, what can you not control? Literally everything else. That's the short story. You alone get to choose what matters to you and what doesn't. And that is it. Everything else is out of your control. How people react to you is outside of your control. How people perceive you is out of your control. So I am, like I said, I'm very direct. I'm kind of tough love. I'm a little in your face. Like I'm just like, I live at a level 10, right? And some people absolutely love that about me. I have wonderful family. I have wonderful friends. There are many people who enjoy these traits about me. There are, several that don't. They do not. They don't like me. They don't perceive me well. They don't enjoy me. They are just like, "Arr." But that's okay, because it's not like, well, I don't need them or whatever. It's that I'm the same person all the time, and all these people that I get along with like me. So if there's these other people that I don't get along with that don't like me, that's okay. We're just not a personality fit. Not everybody has to like me, and I'm not going to water myself down to appeal to an audience that isn't mine. And so I could be worried about the fact that they don't like me, or be concerned with it, or feel bad about it, but I've just chosen, doesn't matter, because not everybody is going to like me. And so the ones that don't, I'm like, cool, I'm going to put you in this bucket over here, and what you think doesn't matter to me. Ta-da! And I know it seems like so much, and like that's so much easier said than done, but it takes some practice, and you can get there. All right, so how do you get there? Let's just talk about, let's be like very tactical. So the first thing is you've got to identify when things are escalating. So for me, when things are escalating, I have this like feeling in my stomach, and my heart rate starts to go up, and my brain starts to move faster, and I can tell when things are escalating, usually based on this feeling in my stomach and my blood pressure. Anger, being offended, being disappointed, feeling the pressure of the outside world, feeling stress and anxiety, just that general sense of uneasiness. When you aren't feeling like good or neutral, and those negative feelings are coming up, boom, that's when you stick a finger in it. And you're like, poke, I see you. I have negative feelings. This does not feel amazing. I need to identify what's going on here. So the first thing is when you got to figure out inside you? Does your mind start racing? Is it your blood pressure? Is it just a feeling? Is it your guts? Like, what is it? How do you know when you're escalating? What feelings do you have? And then you train your brain that when those feelings come, you stick a pin in it and you poke a hole and you're like, hey, what's that about? I need to understand why I feel this way so I can determine how I'm going to address this feeling. Okay? So you're going to identify it. Now, the next thing is you're going to have to investigate it. You're going to pause. Okay, I'm starting to get upset. Why do I feel this way? Are they being disrespectful? Is this person frustrating me? Are they telling me something I don't like, but that's actually the truth? Like, why do I feel this way? And does this feeling serve me? Sometimes it does. Sometimes, I'll be honest, I get that feeling when I'm about to say something I shouldn't. And so this feeling bubbles up in my stomach and I'm like, oh, why do I feel this way? And I'm like, is it because of this situation? Or is it because I'm about to say something I know I'm not supposed to? Yeah. So ask, does this feeling serve me? Sometimes it does serve me. Sometimes that feeling is the Holy Spirit, like, girl, you better shut your mouth. And sometimes it's like, ooh, no, this feeling feels bad because something else external is happening and I need to change the situation. And then you've got to ask, what's the best way to proceed? Objectively, free of your ego. What is the best way to proceed for me to accomplish my goal? And what is my goal here? Is it to get gas? Is it to get groceries? Is it to provide an income for my family? Is it to get my car reimbursed? Is it to, whatever that is? What is my goal and how should I proceed right now? I have the bad feeling. What do I need to do with this? What do I need to do with this? Now you've got to inform yourself. So here's a fun thing. I frequently decide that something doesn't matter to me or I'm not going to be upset about it. And then my brain's like, but, and I'm like, stop it, brain. I told you this doesn't matter. I told you we're not going to be upset about this. I told you we're going to let it go. And I have to remind myself, as soon as I start feeling those things and my brain starts racing again, I'm like, stop. You stop it right there. We decided this didn't matter. We decided we're not spending any more energy on it. I'm going to find something new to think about. And I will literally think about like, okay, what's my next training that I'm doing? Let's start thinking of topics. And I will actually create something to think about instead of the thing that I decided I was not going to be upset about. So you have to choose how you're going to feel. You have to inform your brain, and then you are going to have to insist over and over again because your brain is going to want to just fall into that ego and fall into that noise and fall into that swirl. And you're just going to keep practicing. You're going to keep practicing because I fall off all the time. I'll decide how I feel about something and then fall off again and be upset about it. I'm like, oh no, I wasn't going to be upset about this. I'm choosing to put this down and just keep practicing at it. And lastly, now you're going to act. You identified that something negative was happening. You investigated why you were feeling that way. You decided how you were going to feel about it. And now we're going to take action or not in the situations where that's appropriate. So if you do not have control over your mouth, you will not have control over your future. This is a tough one for me, guys. I'm a real mouthy. So it has taken a lot of self-control, especially in like contract negotiations and working with lawyers, working with politicians, working in all of these circumstances that even when they offend me and piss me off and that my emotions start coming up, that I am able to stop, process it objectively, and decide thoughtfully what I'm going to say next. All right, so here are some tools. We're going to wrap this up. Just a few tools for you to tactically take this into your life. So you can, there's a great concept, roll it around, but like, how do you actually do it? So the first tool is to just get fascinated. So I am a fascinated person. When people start jumping off, like, go back to the restaurant scenario. If that person is being kind of disrespectful, I start wondering. I'm like, wow, I wonder what kind of day they had. I wonder what happened before. I wonder how long they've worked here. I wonder if this is normal for them. I wonder, I am fascinated when people act in a way that is unexpected to me. I am fascinated when people scream at each other in Walmart over masks. I'm not frustrated. I'm like, that is fascinating. Like, what is happening here? I am so curious as to why these people are having this interaction. So instead of being frustrated by other people and their behaviors, when people start acting like in a way that I'm not expecting, I am fascinated. I'm like, what happened there? So get fascinated. Don't be frustrated. Look at things and be like, wow, that is fascinating. When my kid pops off, I'm like really working on this one to be more fascinated with her than frustrated with her. And what does the situation look like when you approach it with being fascinated and wanting to understand it versus wanting to control it and grab onto it and being frustrated with it and pushing your feelings into the situation? When you learn how to turn frustration into fascination, you'll learn more by being fascinated with life than you will by being frustrated with it. All right, next, be an observer. When you start to have those weird emotions, why do I feel this way? Why does that person feel that way? How would I feel about that situation? How can I influence how they feel? Just start asking questions. Be an observer of what's going on around you. Ask yourself, why do you do things? Why did I do that? Why did I do this? That was so good. Why did I do this? That was not so good. And then when you're looking at other people, try to relate to them. When they do something that you don't approve of, you're like, have I done that? Yeah, probably. So be an observer. Try to understand why you feel like you feel. Try to understand why other people feel like they feel. And then it really creates an environment where you can be more objective about other people throwing their emotional stuff at you rather than reacting an emotion back to them. If you're fascinated, you're observing, you're like, oh, this is interesting. Identify pressure. So I don't know if this ever happens to y'all. I'm just kind of high strung, but I will find myself sometimes, I'm just, plugging along, doing normal things and tasks, nothing really, nothing specific getting at me, but I will feel pressure. I will feel stress. I will feel like, ugh, and it's kind of like really challenging to deal with because I don't know exactly what it is that's stressing me out. So I have to stop and identify pressure. When you start feeling caged in or squished or smushed, that pressure, emotionally speaking, right? I found it's been helpful for me to determine, like, is this pressure coming from something inside me, expectations that I have placed on me, or is this pressure coming from expectations somebody else is placing on me? And then is this pressure valid or not? Is it implied or explicit? Is it, hey, if you don't meet this deadline for this project by Friday, you're going to get written up? That is explicit. That is external. That is valid. If it's like, I feel like I need to be selling $10,000 a week in whatever because so-and-so does, that is internal. It's not even valid. It's implied. It's not even explicit. Even when you're looking at expectations other people have for you, have you ever realized, and I've done this, I'm trying to come up with an example, but it's not coming to my mind, but like when you thought somebody expected something of you and you put all of this pressure on yourself and you behaved in a certain way because you thought that that was what they expected and they didn't, because it wasn't ever an explicit thing. You just assumed that was what they wanted. And then you created all this pressure for yourself when you didn't have to. So nobody works better under pressure. They just work faster. And that's something that I've had to take on because I leave things to the absolute last second and it always works out. But the truth is if I did them earlier, I would do them better and I would actually get better results if I didn't wait till the last second. All right. Couple more slides here. We're about to wrap this up. I wanted to keep it to 30 minutes. We'll come in right under 35. So the next is ask for space. As you're practicing this and you're trying to gather those emotions together as situations start to escalate, you can just ask for a pause. Can I take a second to respond? Let's pause for a minute. Hold on. I think my feelings are getting the best of me. Let me think about this objectively for a minute. You can ask for space, and there are very few people who are going to be like, no, you're not allowed to take a moment for yourself. You're not allowed to respond to me objectively. You're not allowed to think about this and get control of your feelings. Like, that's crazy. So just ask for space when you need space, especially when you're beginning this process of learning how to control your emotions and become objective in the moment. You can just ask for space. All right, if you hate bad language, you're going to hate me now for sure. But it's the am I the asshole test. sometimes I'm the asshole, guys. So when you get on the other side of conflict, hopefully you're going to do this in the moment. But when you have conflict, you got to pause for a second and ask, am I the asshole? And sometimes you might be, and that's okay. You can ask for forgiveness. You can go back and admit it. That's all right. You're going to do that. That's good for you to go back and be like, am I the asshole? Yes, I was. I'm going to go back and apologize. I handled that poorly. But if you can get control of those emotions earlier, you can have the am I the asshole conversation before the words come out of your mouth, and then you don't have to apologize later. I like that better. So if you can get control over that and have the am I the asshole conversation before the words come out, you'll have to apologize less. All right, here's our last slide, and this is all about holding yourself accountable. So just like I said a moment ago, it's okay to just be like, I messed that up. So as you're getting better and practicing all of this and you're processing things after the fact and you're like, man, I really screwed the pooch on that. I said some things I shouldn't. I should have handled that totally differently. Instead of slinking off into a corner and shutting yourself down and dying, go back, talk about it, apologize, and then set a good example for them. Because if you start doing that to other people, they will start doing that to you. You are going to set the expectation that when we make a mistake, that we come back and we apologize. And then they get to be validated as well. And now we're really moving towards our goals. That is goal-oriented, not ego-oriented. And you can just come back like, hey, I messed that up. I reprocessed that and I came to some incorrect conclusions. I apologize for reacting without thinking first. I'm sorry I assumed. I was being defensive, and in retrospect, I should have. Can we start over? Can we start over? Those are powerful words in my house. We ask each other for do-overs regularly, and it's okay. All right, so thank you so much for your time. I would love for you to drop any nuggets that were helpful for you in the comments, just for the people who can't watch a whole 30-minute video but might benefit from some of this. If you've got questions, I would love to respond to them. I hope y'all are having a wonderful night, and I will see you back here again tomorrow night, and I will give you some very tactical tools for how I manage more than one business, my family, being on the board of a charity, being on the board of, I just completely spaced, being on the board of our PTO, our HOA. I am involved in politics. I work out every day. People are like, how do you do all the things? So I'm going to give you all of my tactical tips on how I stay organized, create good habits and maintain them, and honestly just stay happy and joyful and peaceful in a world that is bonkers and has lots of demands. All right, so I'll see you back here tomorrow night, and I hope you had a wonderful day. Bye, guys.